Well, here we are at exactly 2 o'clock. So the first thank you goes out that you all made it on time.
Photo finish.
Just a few housekeeping things. I have paper clips if anybody needs them, 2 sizes of Post-its, and this is the quilter's favorite paper clip. So help yourself. There's also snacks if you want a little something to give yourself more energy as we go through. So first of all, I want to welcome everyone. A special welcome out to Les, because Les started us on this adventure. I don't know if you realized what you were, what the result of your soil test would be, but here we are. I think it was interesting that it created a lot of conversation, a lot of discussion, and it really led us to a point where we need to find out more.
And it put me in the hospital.
Well, I hope our discussion doesn't get you back in there.
I don't think there was no.
My blood pressure has been a little high, I will admit. But we welcome you as a team member and thank you. And yeah, I think since you have that history, I think it's appropriate that you join us and stay with us till the gritty end. Who knows when that will be. And we welcome Glenn. All of our meetings on Posh Squash are open. So anyone who would like to attend, to listen, or if they have questions, or if they feel they have an idea to contribute, we're definitely open to that. So, just a quick review, I might even say 5 minutes, of the agenda. We started this look at our forest mulch, which we originally called compost. We started that journey about, maybe 4 to 5 months ago, when some of us, as well as many of the gardeners, began to see things, some of the beds weren't doing so well. And so we began to investigate, what could it be? And I know that Bruce did kind of a water absorption test to see maybe the plants aren't getting enough water. Other people were very suspicious of the forest material that we were bringing in. Now, if I recall right, it was actually Roberta who suggested that perhaps we needed to find out if this forest material could be made into compost. And she actually suggested that it be tested, and she recommended Soil Control Lab. So I think I have those details correct. Does everyone kind of remember that the way I remember it? When Roy, and I shouldn't talk for Roy, but when Roy looked at the samples of what Soil Lab tests, it was felt that it really is not looking at the microorganisms. Control Lab may or may not really look at that. And so he suggested a test for that. And so that's how we got to 2 tests. One is more with the microbiology of things, and the other is more analytical. But I think that between the 2, I think hopefully we will get a pretty good picture of what we're working with, and does it have a future for us? And that's really our question. I'm hoping to end today with basically 2 questions, maybe 3. How do we use this forest product? What's its best use? Do we need amendments for our beds? And if we need amendments to our beds, does that mean we need to recommend to the SC that we purchase compost? So that's kind of where I think we're going today. If we can kind of figure out, do we need compost? We may not need it in all beds, that's kind of a thing we'll have to discuss. But if we need to purchase it, we need to recommend that to the SC at the January meeting, because it's a budget item. And it has been brought up at the SC meetings that there's a preference not to add things to the budget during the year, but to get things in the budget from the beginning. So that's where we are in terms of one way to look at getting there. I think there are multiple ways to get there, and so I've suggested this way to go. So we'll start in a few minutes. We'll start with Roy, and he's going to give us a presentation of the Foothill lab report. If you have a question, he has 15 minutes. I know it's tight. If you have a question, can you please write it down or jot it down? And then at the end of his presentation, there'll be a period of time, around 15-20 minutes, where we can ask those questions, or he can clarify anything that maybe he feels he didn't quite get to. And then we will have a group discussion where we will actually write down what do we think that report says and what can we learn from that report. And then we're going to repeat the process, and Jeannie is going to help us look at the soil control lab. From there, at around 3:10, I'd like to look at look at those points, not as a comparison, but more as a what have we learned by looking at them? What does it tell us in general about what we might need to continue to move to the regenerative process, which we are now, or gardening, which we are now using as we've pretty much come to agreement on that, so we're going to move forward with that. And so keep that in your mind, that we want those questions and that information to kind of reflect where we're going. Okay, so it is, is anyone getting phone calls from nonprofits? It's driving me crazy. So, are there any questions?
Will there be some opportunity to ask more general questions about the group and what we're studying in our soils?
You know what? We have 3 minutes. Would you like to ask some questions?
3 minutes, you mean now?
Yes.
Sure. Because I apologize for coming in late to this group, but the nature of my questions is, because I've looked at all of this material, not maybe every last bit, but it's looked like good work, and it seems to answer questions about, nutrients and the microorganisms, but I didn't see in there, and it's an open question to me, questions about soil structure, and particularly as it pertains to water use. And that's a key concern of mine. Mm-hmm. And when I look at the goal of this group, it's to have a productive garden, which I'd say is, yep, I share that goal, and it's, mm-hmm. and doing, the regenerative gardening, all of that, and all of this stuff I think is great. But I would add as an additional, extremely important goal now, especially now that our water rates have pretty much doubled, that we need to consider soil structure as well, because the use of organic material of any sort, and especially the quantity, has an enormous effect on the quantity of water that's used. And just just to make one additional statement in addition to the question, in that we should establish what is our goal, specifically a measure in terms of how much organic matter is enough, because I'm of the opinion that the science indicates that we already have, in many cases, too much that leads to too much water use.
Well, those are exactly the questions that we're hoping to answer today, because water absorption has been something that we've talked about at this team, at the SC meeting, and our Haney test gave us information on water absorption of what we presently are working with. In terms of the general soil health and consistency, yes, that's also, I think that we'll hit that more when we get to the compost discussion, because we need to really look at, does compost help us, and do we need it for either of the things that you had mentioned. So I don't know if that answers, but I'm glad that the question's out there. So if your reports reflect that, could you please mention that as you go through? So, Roy?
Okay. I'll pass these out. You probably have some of this already, but I highlighted the things that I want to talk about. There's one for you.
Okay, thank you. That's part of what we.
Yeah, well, that's okay. So,
Would you rather stand here, or I can move around?
no, I don't mind just standing up here. Make sure I got my ducks in a row here. This should have been not page one. Since I put page one on your handout, really we should start with page two. I just got them backwards when I was putting this all together. Sorry.
So the one that's numbered,
Well, it's just the next one, the very next page. I don't know if it's number
Oh,
two.
okay,
No,
so-
it's just
It's one of three.
one of
Yeah.
three.
Yeah, so, the soil food web test, I kind of ran into it. I really wanted to look at microorganisms in this soil mulch, because if we decide we're gonna use the forest mulch instead of compost, the trade-off could be microorganisms. I mean, a fully completed organic compost is gonna have a profile of microorganisms. And it's a general number. There's ranges of fungal to bacterial, and it depends a lot on the inputs that go into making that compost. But they have some guidelines. And so, looking through everything, I ran into, Elaine Ingham and her whole clan of people that have been looking at soil food web for a long number of years, and they do it with a microscope. It's qualitative, not quantitative, but it tells you a lot about whatever they're looking at. They've come to see so many samples, and they can see what these microorganisms are, whether they're fungal or bacterial or amoeba-like, protozoa types as well. And so, the first thing you can see on this, the idea is what do we have here? What is forest mulch really composed of? And you've got at the very top, I highlighted the fungal to bacterial biomass as 0.15. And again, this is a qualitative assessment, but it's considered low. And when you look down at each one of these items, bacteria, actinobacteria, fungi, Ummocetes, protozoa, and nematodes, you can see some numbers that I've highlighted. And these have to do with the statistical deviation of his measurements based on what he's seeing in a microscope, okay? With bacteria, we've got a relatively high population with morphological diversity, which appears very high. And this is a plus for the forest mulch, with a number there, 17%. If you look back on the next, if you look on, let's see, page one, flip back to page one on this. I'm sorry I put these back together wrong.
Okay. So this
At
is,
the very bottom of the page, of page one, it talks about a standard deviation value. If it equals or exceeds its associated population count, that count could be much lower or much higher. So we employ reasonable methods to reduce the standard deviation, thereby increasing accuracy. However, a high standard deviation value generally reflects low organism numbers, because as a population shrinks, its members show up in statistical surveys with decreasing consistency. It's just a mathematics thing, right? And so as you look at these numbers across this page here, bacteria 17% is an acceptable number for the SD. You get to actinobacteria, and the estimated amounts are suspect, because you've got 94% standard deviation. That percent number is the SD. And so low, the presence of actinobacteria can be beneficial for early successional plant types. Fungi, again, we have a high number, 83%. And I did talk to this guy, Wes Sander, after this was sent to me, and he said that there's the beginning evidence of fungal organisms in the forest mulch. And so it's on that first stage, but it's low. So again, it's one of the downside of this. We're comparing to organic compost, and it's not any particular organic compost. We're comparing to something that's been fully matured and gone through a thermophilic process and created a balance of microorganisms. That's what happens in a compost pile when it's done properly. So we have the beginning of fungal organisms. The standard deviation suggests that populations are more limited, spotty, so we need to increase fungal organisms. Oomycetes is 0, and I think Oomycetes is the way he said it to me, I think it's an evidence of bad guys in the mix, and 0 is a good number, except for that one, okay? That's optimal.
Yes.
And the protozoa numbers are all moderate. You're kind of in the middle, 50% on the standard deviation for a total. Flagellates 39%, amoeba 105%, which is very suspect. So moderate populations, we need to increase our protozoa. And that's going to happen with cover cropping. There's no doubt that we'll do that as we cover crop. So, I think we're all closer to each other than we realize. There's a lot of things that'll happen in the garden as we keep putting those cover crops in. And I looked it up this morning, did a Google search, and it said that cover cropping will increase fungal organisms. That's clearly one of the things that, especially when you start doing the leguminous and the grasses. I'm not sure if we're going to have picked grasses that we put away the oats, right? But we're going to do other grasses, and they'll
Barley
do,
is currently.
So barley will do that. It'll promote fungal organisms. So
Most of them are barley.
okay, good.
Yeah.
Yeah, good. And then nematodes, there's no nematodes in forest mulch. So increase is needed, and we're putting nematodes in. So that's why I said we kind of come together on these things. And then page 2, we're back to page 2 again, okay? And this has the general guidelines, and you can see for vegetables, you really want 200 micrograms per gram of fungal organisms and 300 micrograms of bacteria for every gram of soil. And our number was 0.15. So the vegetables grow best in a soil containing a fungal to bacterial biomass ratio of 0.3 to 0.8. And forest mulch is 0.15. So it's very low in that fungal ratio. So if you had your choice between the two without any technical difficulties, you'd pick the compost because it would have more of the fungal organisms. Protozoa number should always be a minimum of 100,000 active individuals micrograms individuals per gram of soil, and we don't have that. They've got 70,000, so it's approaching that. So there is some protozoa activity. And that's kind of that's basically what the soil food web analysis is, you guys. So I asked the question, I said, okay, I need to know more about this stuff. So I took and uploaded that analysis to Gemini, and I asked the question. I said, I want to examine the relative quality of a slowly decomposing outdoor pile of wood chips that is more than 50 years old. The pile is 50 to 100 feet deep and about 2 acres wide. The chips are composed of mostly softwood from Monterey cypress, bishop pine, Doug fir, and 30% green waste from homeowner landscape trimmings. That was a wild guess, but I think it's more wood than it is green stuff, from what I know of the history of that chip pile developing, but I could be wrong on that. Let's see, a recent food web analysis of the lower levels of the pile where decomposition has been proceeding slowly showed a relatively high population of bacteria, which is what's on the report, right? With relatively high morphological diversity. It also showed a low population of actinobacteria and a limited spotty population of fungi. The lower levels had a temperature reading of 90 to 100 degrees Fahrenheit, and I uploaded that data. And then I got back. The next page on this report is comparative quality assessment. So if you turn to the page that starts out with
Has
saying,
the boxes?
let's see, and mine doesn't have boxes, but yeah, okay, I'm gonna look in there. 1, 2, 3, so page 3 and physical page 3, not numbered. Your more than 50-year-old wood chip pile would, yes, that's it, and I've highlighted the things I'm gonna read through quickly, I don't wanna take more than my 15 minutes. Your more than 50-year-old wood chip pile would compare poorly to a nutrient-rich or commercial organic compost, especially regarding immediate plant nutrient availability, microbial diversity, and material stability. So the first highlighted thing on the right is under the column for nutrient-rich commercial organic compost, short-term soil fertility booster. It focuses on immediate nutrient release and inoculation with a high microbial biomass. In the nutrient availability carbon to nitrogen ratio, the softwoods are rich in carbon and lignin. Decomposition will be slow, causing nutrients to be immobilized, tied up by microbes, leading to very low immediate nutrient release for plants. Then below that, the mesophilic is stalled. The 90 to 100 degree temperature confirms a slow, low heat decomposition. The sheer depth likely creates an anaerobic, low oxygen environment in the core due to, and then I guess it went to the next page, due to compaction. And I've been down in that hole where they're getting our stuff, and it's so compacted it's hard to get it off the wall. So it's true. That was anaerobic. I think we don't dispute this. Most of this stuff is just logical conclusions from what's there. On nutrient-rich commercial organic compost would be thermophilic and cured. It undergoes high temperatures, greater than 131 degrees Fahrenheit, composting to kill pathogens and weed seeds, resulting in a stable, cured product that won't significantly heat up or consume soil nitrogen upon application.
The housekeeper's here.
And then the final pages, there's one page and a little paragraph continuing to get the feedback from Jim and I on this analysis. The soil food web analysis you reported reveals a profile that is highly characteristic of a stalled or potentially anaerobic breakdown of woody material, which is the opposite of a high-quality aerobic commercial compost. The fungi to bacteria ratio, I've highlighted the part that I think is important. Your observation of a limited spotty population of fungi but a relatively high population of bacteria suggests an environment that is detrimental to beneficial fungi. This is a red flag as it is inconsistent with the primary decomposers of your feedstock and likely points to anaerobic conditions. And then at the bottom of the page, your wood chip pile, the low population of actinic bacteria is notable. And this is something I hadn't really ever dug in and found out about, but the actinobacteria is really important, as this group is often responsible for the final breakdown of recalcitrant compounds in mature compost. The low fungal to high bacterial population combined with the potential anaerobic core means the decomposition pathway is likely inefficient. This can lead to the production of phytotoxic compounds, and the process is not guaranteed to have destroyed pathogens, pest eggs, or weed seeds, which is the goal of commercial thermophilic composting. And the final paragraph, and I'm done here. It is designed to contain a full, active soil food web, including high populations of protozoa and beneficial nematodes, commercial compost, not just bacteria and fungi. The high protozoa count shows that nutrient cycling is active and robust. It's a stable finished product, meaning it will not tie up nitrogen from the soil or produce harmful decomposition byproducts. Thank you.
Well
It
done,
kind of speaks for
Roy.
itself, and this
Wow.
is mostly, this is settled science for the most part. I mean, we could go through it and dig in a little bit, but I think it's, the science of compost is well established.
Thank you, Roy.
You're welcome.
Does anyone have questions for Roy? This is the time to ask questions about his report. Yes.
I think I know the answer. I just want to confirm that this is the recent the better forest compost that we've got recently, not, it seems.
This was just a question to Jim and I.
Oh, this was not,
I didn't,
There's no
we have no
samples.
samples. So
I think Les is asking about the actual FM sample that was sent
Oh, I'm sorry.
to, is that to
Yes.
Foothill?
yes.
Yes, so the report that I uploaded to Gemini was from that soil food web analysis of forest mulch from the bottom of the hole.
I'll
right?
answer your question. It was the previous load, not the current load of forest mulch, is what I think you're asking.
Well, I'm asking which one was it, because
The previous
previous.
load.
But that,
The end of
but I went
previous
down
load.
into
that
the
was
hole
not,
and got.
that
got
seemed to be a.
forest
Oh,
mulch
you
off
took
of
it
the-
on
I took-
site.
I took some on site, yes.
That seemed to be the more poor quality, more woody, less decomposed than what we originally got and what we're getting again. It seems, I mean,
That was an observation that, yes, that we have.
I'm trying to.
So-
As we
Yeah.
get deeper in that hole, it gets more decomposed, and it could be that we get more microorganisms. I wouldn't doubt that. Okay, so, but it's not changing that much. I've been in there a lot, you guys.
Well,
and
I
I
just
don't
want-
see it changing much.
Just want to
okay?
confirm which one the assessment was done on, just to be clear.
It was done from the lowest levels of the
So
hole, but
nothing-
it's.
nothing that was
it-
delivered
It was,
to the
the-
garden,
it was the
just-
previous delivery. Monique's right about that. It's the previous delivery.
Previous meaning,
The rough one,
the rough one.
the chunky one.
The chunky,
The,
okay.
Pretty
I,
much the
Does that
same,
help?
though.
I think there's not that much difference, and then we could argue that, but I don't think it's worth arguing, but I don't see that much
That's
difference.
not-
It's a little bit more
Okay.
fine material and a little less chunky material, but it's still massively chunky.
Okay, I didn't want to debate that part, because I think that's a worthy.
And I think there's a place where we could do it again. We could get, especially if we get any deeper and we start looking at that, we could start to see, because it'll help us to understand what we got. And if we try to identify a commercial compost, I think we should do a soil food web on it too. And then we can look at both of them side by side. At least we have a fair comparison that way.
When you were down in the hole, was there any sulfur smell? H2S, because that would be anaerobic, an indication of anaerobic. Black usually is too, but in compost, it's a little difficult to say if the color is that meaningful.
Yeah, not so much. Not that I
Okay.
can remember a sulfur smell, no.
Okay.
I have been there with Roy, and I have a very good nose.
What do you think?
And I think it does have a very neutral smell.
Yeah,
No ammonium,
yeah, I agree.
no off smell, nothing
Yeah.
ripe or rotting.
Right.
So it's very neutral.
Yeah.
And there's stuff growing, there's fungal organisms, we can see them.
There's a lot of mycorrhizae
activity.
There's stuff growing in
So
there
what's that about?
that's spreading, so it's not,
Yeah.
Wes said he thinks it's not a bad product, even with this result that doesn't exactly match up to full organic compost, but he said it's not a bad product in his estimation, and he's looked at a lot of stuff, he's been doing this for years and years, he's up in the organization, so.
Jeannie, you had a
I
question?
have a question about the temperatures. I've been taking the temperature of the new load every
Okay.
few weeks and keeping track of it in numerous places in the pile. And when I took the samples as well, when it had just arrived, so it had been there, I think, 3 or 4 days when I took the samples out. It was, excuse me, it was in the range of 100 to 122 degrees.
Oh, nice.
And has continued to be so,
Yeah,
unless
nice.
you're real close to the surface. I use the compost thermometer that they use in the compost. So given that the temperatures are in that range, how does that compare with, when you were there taking the samples, we were taking the soil samples, and you said it was about 90 degrees in.
To 100, yeah, there were places where I got over 100, and of course,
Okay.
that was in the pile itself, and I didn't
Wow.
take temperature down in the hole, I didn't do that. But it's, once they dig it out,
Right.
dump it, you get that whole aeration thing that
Yeah.
kicks it up, and I think that's a good sign. I think we could
Yeah.
live with this stuff. The question is, do we want something, do we want to spend money and go through this challenge to get this stuff? Because it'll give us a lot more than this forest mulch is doing. I think there's trade-offs in both directions, there really is, so,
One more thing about the temperatures, is that an indication that it is still composting, or is that an indication that it's in its finishing period?
That's a good question. It's I think what happens, what we're seeing is the addition of air when they dump it. That's what
Sure.
we've seen that every time.
Mhm.
So-
Right, but
and
you're
so-
activating.
And so you're activating something that's been under anaerobic conditions, but it's got some long-term breakdown, and so there's microorganisms there. There's bacteria that are ready to work. If it could get up to 130 or 140, we would start to generate real compost. And if we had a source of clean manure, and I say clean relative to everybody feeling hunky-dory about it, we could probably, because the carbon to nitrogen ratio on this stuff is about 30, we could
Right.
probably turn it all into compost.
Well, when I did a pile in my yard, which was about 20 cubic yards,
Yeah,
within 5 days, it was over 140 degrees, and it stayed there. So
which would be
because it
nice
was
if we could do
fresh,
that. Yeah.
is that something that we're seeing lower temperatures because perhaps this has already gone through that process because it's old?
Ah,
Yeah, I don't
interesting.
think you would ever believe that stuff has done that. It would have fungal organisms, and it doesn't have fungal organisms, which is kind of the primary.
I
that's
see
that's
active fungal.
We see them.
No, but soil food web test, you can see what you see. He's seen a much lower. We don't have the actinobacteria, and we don't have protozoa. So it hasn't. When you get a full composting, you're going to get all those things, and we don't have them. So
In the mulch.
they're not in the mulch. That's that's the kind of the take home of this test. But we would generate them if we could do it. We could get it back to 140 degrees, and there's enough. Once you're at 30, you can get those temperatures as long as you have a nitrogen source. I think the logistics of that are probably a nightmare, but whatever.
So what can we, let's go, what are your thoughts about the foothill test? So Bruce, what are you just kind of thinking in general?
I'm impressed, really. Just what the numbers kind of mean to somebody who really knows this stuff.
Tell us more about what you elaborate, more words.
Oh, well, I
You don't think it's,
used to count bacteria and
right.
and
So-
flagellates and stuff like
so are
that.
you
So I'm
saying it's,
kind of envisioning what they went
it's
through.
better than you thought it was? Is that what
Yeah.
you're saying?
No, I'm saying I'm impressed with the test methodology.
Ah, okay.
And then the interpretation, I think, is is the most valuable part.
Okay, so give us your thought about interpretation.
Well, the interpretation of what the actino bacteria and what that all means. It does seem like it's got a ways to go, I guess.
Okay, so I'm just gonna put a ways to go. I don't wanna put words in
Yeah.
anybody's. I don't wanna try to make conclusions on what you're trying to say.
What does go mean? What?
It needs to be mature, more
Mature, okay.
Yeah, more mature. That's a better word than go.
Yeah. Well, it opened it up to a lot of
Michael,
things.
what is your thinking?
Well, I would argue that you're right, that it could be more mature, but I think it's still, I think some of the positives that it's what we need. It's what we need in our garden, and I think that when we do look at things like the cover cropping, providing additional nutrients, that we might have that ability to decompose provided right on the bed.
Are you saying that it may need some help? It may need some, another amendment? No?
No, because I've heard other things already that I think that it is I think it's what we need.
You think are you saying it's complete in
While I know that it's not mature yet, I think the way we can use it, it is complete.
So,
Okay.
so I like what you said, but I think so. I'm not trying to put words in your mouth. I'm putting words in my head that I'm trying to.
Sure.
After
We're
what
trying
you
to
said.
process, is what we're all trying to do.
Is
So
that-
please think of it that way. We're just trying to get
That's
it
been
in
a
the
big
brain.
question in my mind. We're going to take this immature product, we've put it into the bed, we've put cover crop on there. How do we know that the two have done what we needed to do? we're hoping that does something to this material.
Well,
Positive.
I think when we bring in some of the other data, and especially like the Haney reports,
Well, the Haney predates,
well, sure it does.
yeah.
But at the same time, when you just look at that, the quality of the soils was remarkable. So I think that, I just think that this compost is what we need for right now, when coupled with, and yeah, you know, to answer you, Bruce, it's one of those things where we could re-evaluate as we go. So if we're finding that the cover cropping is not kind of jiving with everything else, that we do something a little bit different.
Okay, we haven't
Yeah, trying to get
decided
around
the
the
table
room,
yet?
yeah.
Okay, Jeannie?
Thank you. Well, I can't look at these things in an isolated manner because I spend too much time working in the garden. And when we got the Haney test done, one of the things that was important to me was to consider the system it was operating on at that time, which is on the beds that got the highest soil respiration numbers, which is an indication of microbial activity. Ours were basically off the charts for bed 36 and 56, and that indicates huge amount of forest mulch, not refined, that was added to those beds a year ago. So that would have been with the same batch that was tested in your test. And the way it's operating is doing all of the things that we could only hope to see. And in the crop that we just harvested on 36 and are harvesting on 38, which had the same application of forest compost, we're actually seeing an unbelievably healthy crop. So I can't say that I think anything except it is performing. It's performing really well in terms of once it is on the bed and reacting with whatever else is in our soil or has been put in it over the years, it seems to be performing in an amazingly
So can I say
strong.
that visually it seems to be performing? Or
No,
how do
I
you
don't
want me
think
to
you
phrase
can
that?
limit it to visually because we have harvested. We have watched, and in addition to that, we have watched the level, the inches or the depth, whatever you want to say, that had been added to that bed, 12 inches, now reduced to 1 inch in less than a year. So it is being digested. So it's a how do you say that?
So I left it at performing well, which is similar to what Michael is saying.
But
Yeah.
He
that's
thinks
an
it's
older bed
performing
then.
well.
It's over a year old, right?
I'm sorry, what's older?
The thing that has gone from 6 inches to 1 inch is one of your dry
12
bed.
inches. To
12
1
inches to 1 inch.
We put that on last winter.
Yeah,
Okay, so
Yeah.
it's a
so it's
year.
an older, so
Okay.
we don't know what our newer ones are doing.
Well,
They're growing
we
for
put
sure.
some on 56, that's from the newer bed. And that, we only added 6 inches because it didn't have potatoes. And it's down to 0. So it's all, and it's the other bed that performs so high on the soil respiration. So I don't think that one batch to another batch of forest mulch is actually that different in its microbial content. I
Yeah, I
think
don't
that's
think so.
relatively similar.
I think Bruce is asking the right question. Here it is. This is why this is important. Because if you don't look at the bed history, we have nothing to make an assessment to your point. How do we know how fast it's going? How long is it failing? When is it succeeding? That rate is really what the in-bed and the bed history. When was that chore done? When was that added? So, and how much was added? That bed history will guide us to your answer. And considering whether the load is old or new, that rate of absorption and decomposition on that mulching top layer is really what it's all about. And the second thing is if you look at the rebuilt beds, bed 22 and 25, remember that's lasagna layers. That's a lot of wood chips, forest mulch and stuff. That stuff is incredible. So what's that about? I'm curious. I'm really curious. What does that mean that is happening in there? It's not getting any water. It's growing just out of that substrate, that medium. It's kind of curious. I'm not saying anything other than that's amazing looking.
Yeah.
You know, so I'm observing, I'm curious, and I think you're on to the right question. What's that timing?
Les?
An observation and kind of question, this also, it seems like good information, but the test was just on the forest mulch, which is very different. And what I'm hearing here, it's like, really the question that's more important for us is how does that forest mulch act when it's in conjunction with some of the soils? And what I suspect is there's a transition period, and I think that we've observed that too, though it's hard. I mean, you'd have to do so much analysis, so much study, but I think in its initial application, especially in surface, and especially for some crops, there's a transition period where there's gonna be some deficit, not good, but over time you have the interaction of that material in the soil, and it will work better. I have a question for Michael. I just wanted to be clear, because I'm kind of literal and I'm going to keep circling back to goals and stuff. What is it what you meant when you said it's what we need? And the reason I'm asking this, because I'm sensitive to, I feel like so much of what we're doing, we have predetermined, and even in much of this discussion, it seems that it's like, well, we have forest compost, we're going to use it, how do we use it? And it's just like, I think that that's still, for a variety of reasons, a not good assumption. It might be good in some ways, but it's like, so when you say need, could you define it's what we need to achieve?
I think what I'm emphasizing is how well the forest compost in the past has worked with our soils to produce the crops that we're getting.
So it's like what we need to achieve increased productivity or
I think we're extremely productive.
okay.
And
I just want to say, there's the question of production, and then there's the question of the nutrient value of the crop itself. There are those two different questions. Glenn, would you like to contribute anything?
Nope, I'll pass.
Are you sure?
When you start talking about, pathogens and
He gets all
Wait.
excited about it.
I'll just
Bonnie.
pass.
I have
Okay,
one more. I have one more comment, if you
Yes.
don't mind. So this year, when we built the 2 new beds and we put that forest mulch on there was a time lapse of how long before we sowed it?
There
2
was,
weeks, 3 weeks?
I think 3 weeks
So we-
before we got around to cover
Immediately,
cropping.
it was extremely effective. There wasn't a time delay, and that was for seeds to germinate in it. We got
And
unbelievable
this is for
germination.
what seeds? What was planted?
I'm sorry?
What seeds?
Cover
What-
crop,
Cover crop.
Yeah,
barley,
for-
bell bean.
For, there was fava, bell beans,
Oh, fine, cover
Oh,
crop.
okay, yeah.
The cover crop, yeah.
yeah.
Okay,
Which is
Bonnie,
grasses,
before you
to
move on.
Roy's point.
you have 1 minute because I'm going to add 5 to,
Okay,
We've taken
but just
an extra
because,
5 minutes.
and I agree with that the Haney test shows that we have a high microbial counts, and the soil food web test said we have a lot of bacterial organisms. But if we're lacking fungals and we're lacking actinobacteria, we may be getting results that could be much improved if we had a nutrient-rich organic compost. So we're trying to compare forest mulch to organic compost. To say that forest mulch can give us what organic compost can do, maybe, but it may also lead to the production of phytotoxic compounds, and the process is not guaranteed to destroy pathogens, pest eggs, or weed seeds. And it's inconsistent with the primary decomposers of your feedstocks and points to anaerobic conditions. So it's going to work, but it's going to be a longer process, and it may be not helping us to bring our fungal organism problem under control too. One of the things that helps lower bad guys in a commercial organic garden is fungal-rich compost. And so we're gonna have to wait for those fungals to develop. That's, if you're trading off, that's a trade. Anyway, thank you.
okay, so what we're going to do is, I'm going to change the agenda a bit. So we're now at 2:45, so we'll be going to 3 o'clock. So Jeannie, would you like to tell us about the soil control lab?
I would like Michael to introduce us to that.
Well, when I first joined the soil team, my first question was straightforward. How healthy are our garden soils? And the Haney test results gave a clear answer. They're biologically vigorous, chemically balanced, and thriving in every major measure. Now a second question comes to my mind. What kind of garden do we want to be? What kind of garden do we want to be? If your answer is anything like mine, we want a regenerative garden, one that produces its own fertility, builds soil from within. With the use of our composts, we have homemade compost, we have long-term pile, and also the forest mulch of our local landscape. The data tells us plainly our current practices are creating healthy soil. Bringing an outside compost isn't just costly, but I do believe this can be risky. It risks weakening the very relationship that defines this garden. It's regeneration. It shifts us from being a participant in a regenerative cycle to being consumers of fertility, and from seeing soil as a partnership, that we are in partnership with the soil, to treating it as a problem.
Thank you, Michael. So everybody's seen all the data. I'm not going to go over one by one. I picked a few items out of it to present briefly. So our forest mulch, if it was seen with an NPK value, it would be 0.69, 0.22, 0.29 NPK. The two other composts that I listed on there, one is an example of a commercial compost you could buy, which Roy had suggested to us, and we had tests from the same laboratory. Theirs would have been 2.2, 0.79, 1.1, and the compost used by Singing Frogs Farm to augment their own house compost is called Clean Green, and it's 0.92, 0.31, and 0.63. So looking over the phosphorus and the potassium content, from ours it's 960 parts per million. Potassium, that's the phosphorus. Our potassium is 2,400 parts per million. On two items that we already have plenty of in our soil based on the Haney test, and we are not supposed to add any according to their recommendations. So those numbers looked high, but when you look at the commercial compost with a phosphorus of 3,500 parts per million and a potassium of 8,900 parts per million, I say this is concerning because these are things we don't want to be adding. The Clean Green came in at 1,300 phosphorus parts per million and 5,200 potassium parts per million. So again, they're quite a bit higher than ours are. The pH on the forest mulch is 6.01, which is great. The Cold Creek, which was the one Roy presented, was 7.28, and the one that Singing Frogs augments with is a bit low at 5.09. So, we're looking at compost saying, well, forest mulch still.
So you're
Excuse me?
looking, just a second, I'll give you more time. So you're looking at the compost data from Coal Creek and, okay. What about the forest mulch?
I gave it to you.
That's the first number.
That's the first number I've been giving out. Should I repeat them?
Somehow I got lost when you moved over to compost discussions because I thought we were going to really focus on, is this FM something we want to continue to use, and do we want to supplement it?
Well, I think we have to kind of look at it in context, otherwise these are just numbers. Would you like me to compare it with what UC Davis has in their information? That was in our report. I didn't think we had time for that.
I read that, but I'm just continue.
Thank
We'll
you.
see what questions come up.
Okay, so for zinc, Forest mulch is at 66 parts per million. The other two are higher. The boron is at 12 parts per million. The other two are considerably higher. Organic material is 43.2 for our forest mulch, and the ash is 56.8. These are percentages for the forest mulch. And those two numbers, the organic materials and the ash, there's a total of 100%. So if a finished compost is considered to be approximately, the right place to be, it's about 50-50. When you get up to 65% of organic material, it's suggesting that it's unstabilized, that it is not a good balance, and that it's considered to be unstable and immature compost. So both of the others are unstable and immature composts, whereas ours, according to those figures, is not. So I think the forest mulch is looking pretty good to me. We can look at carbon and nitrogen ratio, and we see that at 31.9 for our forest mulch. We see that as at 16 for the Cold Creek and 39 for the clean green waste. So basically, I'm seeing these numbers and all the other ones that were listed in the report looking pretty good as far as what we're already using. Now, this was a nutrient test, and so it includes a lot of things here, but a lot of those nutrients that are listed are things we do not want to be adding with compost. We want to be adding those more carefully, because we have a lot of those things in our soil as per the Haney test, and the various things we plant don't have the same requirements. Even on the nitrogen, they're really showing how high we really are when you look at the Haney test. So that's why the context matters. It's really important. So then I went on to benefits of using the forest mulch to enhance our living soil. So number one, it's safe. It's non-toxic to plants, animals, microbes, and humans. It's local. It's made with local materials that are limited to only vegetative materials. It's inspected and collected only by our local community members. There's no lumber, no sawdust, no muni waste, and no debris from agricultural businesses included in it. It's an ideal food and shelter for microbes. The various size pieces decompose at a range of rates, so it provides a functioning mulch layer all season and a stable environment to house and sustain the microbial community continuously. It's non-burning and safe for all plants. It provides a surface that readily infiltrates water, and it prevents soil from splashing onto plants and prevents soil compaction by heavy rain. One of the things you notice when you look at it is that the surface of it, even now in the winter, is relatively dry, because it has broken the evaporation barrier that would allow vapor transfer to the atmosphere. So it's actually staying dry, which helps prevent it from hosting insects and from splashing up onto our plants with any kind of harmful funguses. So it's working really adequately. It also provides the carbon component to compost cover crop that's in place. So the cover crop is sown and grown and terminated on the beds with about a 1-inch layer of forest mulch, and it's providing the ideal carbon to nitrogen ratio of about 30-1. So that's 30-1 brown and green, brown being the forest mulch and green being the cover crops. So Monique, to you.
Okay, last but not least, I want to provide some context, because if we really have a good discussion, we will need to talk about what do we really want forest mulch to do, or any product that we are the gatekeepers of. It should allow infiltration of water to the root zone. It should not hold water, getting the water to where it is needed most. There it is absorbed by the aggregates created by the healthy microbiome, and that in turn feeds the plants. We are not feeding plants here. We're not supplying nitrogen. That's not how regenerative farming works. We're not adding nitrogen at that level. It should inoculate the soil by adding beneficial microorganisms. It should provide a consistent source of food for microbes and mycorrhizae varying particle size that continue to feed the microbiome over months on that top layer. It should protect topsoil from wind, rapid change, or excessive temperatures and evaporation. Ideally, we need a product that provides a balanced pH, low phosphorus, potassium, and nitrogen as the recommendations in our testing. That's why the FM data is so important, to look at that in context with what Haney's telling us to look for. What are the best products? Let's look at that. Ideally, and it should not contain any PFAS, pesticides, herbicides, antibiotics, or plastic waste. PFASs are found in numerous pesticides and herbicides used in California. And when labeled as part of the inert contents, they are not required to be listed on any product, which is really alarming to us. I've stopped using commercial compost because of this, all this research that I'm now looking at. Last, it should provide a healthy medium for microbes to sustain long-lasting, high nutrient cycling levels, high soil respiration levels, and high water infiltration, as shown by the Haney test scores. That shows us the ones, if you look at the history, what beds do it the best, and those should become our guidelines. Michael, you're going to sum it up.
Yeah, and I'm going to mention a few of the points that both of you made. I think our forest mulch is more than mulch. It's providing a great deal of meaningful organic matter, some available nitrogen, really a lot of the things our soil biology needs. This mulch feeds the microbes that in turn feed our plants. Our task isn't to amend the mulch really, but to fine-tune the soil beneath the mulch with specific nutrients, like our feather meal, added only in the amounts needed by the upcoming crop. This helps to avoid that over-fertilization, which can suppress microbial life rather than support it. So in practice, this means when we're actually prepping a bed, this means raking in the feather meal into the first 2 inches of that soil. And that soil is actually where the seedlings are going to be planted too. Again, not up there, not up high in the forest mulch. And then applying a 1/2 inch for our raised beds, a full inch for our mounded beds of the mulch itself, of the forest mulch. And together, these steps will sustain that soil biology by providing that fertility our plants require. So I'm actually really heartened by all of the findings that we've seen in these meetings. The Haney test confirmed that our soils are thriving. And now we see that our forest mulch is a rich, homegrown resource, more than enough to feed the soil that feeds us. It offers the organic matter and the microbial support our garden needs to really flourish. And it strengthens the regenerative cycle that we've already built. I think we should be really happy and proud because we've built all of this together.
Thank you. You have another minute.
We'd like to put that into the discussion.
Okay, so does anyone have questions for the presentation from Control Lab?
I have questions about other things that were mentioned, but not about that. So I don't know if you want to carry this.
Well,
on
let's
to further
just
things.
take one thing at a time and we'll come back. Are there any other questions about the test from the forest mulch?
Just to confirm, I mean, a comment first, that I don't disagree with anything in terms of the nutrient value and the regenerative. In fact, I'm not to be unpopular, as I frequently am, but the accentuating how, you know, we want to have this garden and do the things that you're saying here. It's just like, I take that as a given, so it's sort of like, I don't dispute any of that, so it's not like I need to be convinced of any of that. I'm more of a science guy, so I have very specific questions and comments, and the main question is, did any of this Haney test, did it all discuss either of two things in terms of the water retention, water uptake qualities of the soil? Okay, so I'm hearing, yes, I want to hear about the comments on the water uptake capacity of the soil, because that's different from water retention. And I also want to know, did any of this lead to a goal of how much organic matter is enough? What are we shooting for?
Well,
And then finally, much of the discussion, just a number of things, much of the discussion seemed to go back and forth between using forest compost as a mulch, and we seem to kind of be a little bit imprecise, I think, unless I'm hearing wrong, as a mulch, but also as a soil amendment.
No.
Not as a
Uh-uh.
soil amendment.
This is what we sent out. This is how we are employing it currently in the past couple of years. And this is what we're promoting. So that top layer is the mulch.
When you
It's
say
2
top-
to 3 inches, just 2 to 3 inches on the very top.
If even
That intermediary layer, that transitional, is that decomposition layer. We want to keep that on the top. We don't want that mulch to get down in there. This is where all the microbes and the mycelium come up to feed. That's our critical layer. Down here is where our root zone is. This is where we want the water to go. We don't want the water up here.
So I just want to, so we're only talking in the future as using it as a mulch, except,
Yes.
Ever
Except
since we
for
started No Dig in 2019, we have used compost as a mulch.
Except
Whatever
for when
compost
we're-
we were utilizing.
except for building
building
new
beds.
beds,
You're
when
right.
we're adding it.
We're doing
Right.
lasagna layers, that's
Yeah.
correct.
Yeah.
Okay, I just want to
Yeah.
confirm,
Yeah.
so only as a mulch,
Mhm.
except for lasagna layer
When
in
we
the
build
new
the new
beds.
bed.
And so that's an area where I have, I mean, this is a complicated discussion, because that's where I have some concerns, because I also know what we tested and what's currently in our beds, it's not that. In many beds, the mulch has been mixed with the soil. It's not just at the surface. It's because of our practices, it has been.
We have no-till garden. Who's tilling?
Well,
I think it just migrates
It's
down.
it migrates, and when,
Clear.
I mean, I've seen,
I think that's part of
That's-
a healthy cycle, though.
Yeah.
well, and that's.
We're not tilling it in. It is settling, it is going in, but we're not digging it in.
Could, so I'm not sure if this is an area of disagreement, but it's like my observation is, based on what we're doing, it is migrating in at depth. And when I looked at a number of beds, and I'd say this is perhaps something else to confirm, look at whatever horizon, the initial rooting depth, 6 or 8 inches when we're transplanting seedlings, what the roots see when they're initially transplanted, and what's very important for some of our shallow rooted crops, how much organic material do we have in that area? Because that is critically important for soil structure and how much water we use. Because that's
Totally
where I'm
agree.
coming at this. We're, based on our new water rates, we're gonna be spending at least $9,000, maybe 10, based on our current water rates, which have been creeping up. I don't think we should be engaging in any practices that are going to increase our water needs.
So what'd
And
you
in
think
my-
about the soil photos that we did at the time of testing?
It looks like was there any analysis of how much organic material is in those soils? Because I mean,
Well, the Haney
photos are
Yes,
hard to
in the
interpret.
Haney test.
In the
Okay,
Haney,
so then what is the percentage of
The
organic?
highest one that we have, I mean, do you wanna jump over there? Sorry, I
Yeah,
don't
we
have it
can-
off the top of my head. We'll have to
Okay.
go to there.
Okay, organic matter.
I know
what's
our
it?
highest and our lowest. Mineral had almost,
So measures
Yeah.
utility,
just a minute.
here. Do you remember which category it was?
We'll have to find it right here.
'Cause I looked-
No.
we're
I
looking
didn't-
at,
I
I
didn't
think,
see
the
it.
organic matter percentage.
Yeah, organic
OM.
matter, sorry, there I am. Okay, so our highest is 28.6.
That's what I have,
And that was bed 36,
which had our highest scores.
had our highest scores. And incidentally, we watered less than an inch, equivalent of an inch per week. We looked up all the watering records
The watering
for this
history
year.
showed
So
remarkably
bed
less water
36
used
had
to
what
ratio.
bed?
28.6.
And that's by weight?
It's
I
on the
would
top.
imagine,
Where
I don't
is
know.
it?
I
Probably
don't know.
right.
It's by
Total-
LOI.
Yeah,
Percentage of
total
LOI.
soil organic matter expressed as a percent loss on ignition, percent LOI. SOM is made mostly of organic carbon, but it also contains all other essential plant nutrients. We think of SOM as the house the microbes live in. That is from Regen Labs glossary.
So
for
which
these terms.
file is this in? Because I don't recall
The Haney
seeing.
test, that was sent
It-
originally over by Bonnie to you.
Okay.
Actually,
No, I sent all
Oh, I'm
I
sorry.
sent- That's the big spreadsheet.
Okay.
Okay.
It's on the spreadsheet.
yeah,
So-
I have it on paper if you want
So,
It's
so
hard to
let's,
read 'cause it's so
to be
tiny.
clear, if you read the intro to the Haney test, it says it's incomplete
Well, that's,
analysis without doing the soil water holding capacity, infiltration and things. It's in the first paragraph.
yeah, I saw that. That's what struck me. But
And so we haven't done any of that. I brought that up, that I think we should be doing that. I think that's, in my mind, the compass for going forward, is measuring that in our fields. It's not a tough test, but if we're steering the wrong way, it's better to see which way you're going early.
What if,
Because,
can I,
Okay, just, I want to capture that. Measure the water, you're talking about water absorption?
No.
Or soil moisture holding
Just
capacity.
The moisture holding capacity, thank you.
I mean, it's super important of all things, right?
I mean, it's
it's critical.
It's critical.
well, and it's a metric that can be measured, and where everything, the garden looks great, but that's qualitative. That's like, are we drifting towards the rocks? You can't tell, but it looks great. And the other part of me, I keep hearing my boss when I was a young biologist saying, I go, Dr. Jasby, look at what I've done. This is so great. And he goes, where's the control? And we've got a mishmash out there, no controls, but it looks great. So if we can find a metric like soil moisture holding capacity, which has dollar signs next to it.
Can we add one more thing to that? Because we've discussed this here, because that's important, but it's not sufficient. We also need to make, because it's a different number, what is the crop water availability?
Can I
Because
submit?
organic matter, when you have too much, which even the 30% is not, that's not done. That's a high value. That'll hold a lot of water, but it's not available for the crop. It's the nature of the soils. And that's, and I appreciate that, I got kudos for getting us started on this, but I mentioned two issues. One was the nutrients, but one was the structure. And if you relook at that, and I can resend it, there's a very simple chart that just shows you have high organic soils will hold a lot of water, but you also reach the permanent wilting point at a much higher water level. So your soils can be wet, and the crops will wilt and die. And what that leads to, and what I think we've observed, because we saw it with strawberries, and we'll see it with other things, anything that has such high organic material is, wow, it seems kind of wet, but the plant will not be able to pull the moisture.
Yeah.
I mean, so just before you present me with data, not that I'm not interested in data, but that's soil physics. That's just the nature, that's just the way it is.
Yeah.
So, I really won't engage in terms of but this, but that. That's the simple chart is if you have too high organic matter, it holds a lot of water, the crop can't get it. And just a way to think about it, not to be lecturing here, that's the reason we're using it as a mulch, because it doesn't, things can't grow in it easily. You can't evaporate it out. In the same properties that are acting on the surface like that, you put too much of that in the soil, the same thing happens.
I would like to answer that in a question. Would you consider the watering sheet history of a bed for the year in contrast to the success or failure of a crop to be any indication that the crops, the water level amount in relationship to how the crops thrived is an indication, short of spending money on getting those tests that you're recommending? I mean, this is what we're all
Yeah.
available to us today,
The
right?
problem with the immediate response is it's hard to know, you don't have a control. You know, because I've heard people, and we've had this discussion here, you can grow in 100% organic matter beautifully, and roots will love it, you just keep it wet, and you're kind of growing hydroponically. Just because you can doesn't mean you should, because depending on the nature of your subsoil and everything else, you're using more water than is
I
necessary.
agree. We cannot keep the soil wet. We should not keep the
Well,
soil wet.
But then that also means we need to target what is the right percent of organic matter. And I think at 30%, we're that's
Off the
getting,
charts.
it's
Yeah,
getting,
we-
Singing Frog was 12.
We discussed
Yeah.
that, and
And
they
they're-
said,
they think
that
they're-
actually they were 8, and some beds got to 12.
Oh,
They thought
okay.
that-
They're
they
a
thought that was
field, they're a
lot.
farm with, thousands, hundreds of acres, so I think we have an advantage. We have a
Well, that
garden.
doesn't mean we
If a
should put
little
more
is good,
organic
more is
matter.
not better.
It's an advantage, but we also can
necessarily a good
overdo it
thing.
easy,
Okay,
more
one at a
easily than
time.
they can.
Bruce,
I just,
and then back to
I just
Roy.
want,
It's okay.
please be open to, I'm coming here open, and I'm hearing, and I'm being positive about so many of the things that we've done. Be open to the suggestion that there is an upper limit of organic matter that may be best if you're also concerned about water use. That's all I'm asking, it's like, just kind of consider
What about
that.
Dry Farm that has the most usage of our FM? They use 40 cubic yards a season.
So you start, the wonderful thing about dry farming is you're starting with, conditions like this, and hopefully it starts raining, and the roots are being driven
Monday.
down, and they're at depth, and I doubt we've added that much organic material at 12 inches, 18 inches for our deep-rooted, dry farm crops. So that's a great thing, but anything that you're gonna be irrigating, it changes it, because the roots are shallow, and you have to consider that it's acting more like a sand or a coarse material, and it's worse than sand, because it's holding moisture, but it's not giving it up. You're gonna be irrigating more. So it's those different things in terms of how dry farm reacts in terms compared to irrigated.
Bruce, you gonna comment?
On the soil control lab reports, I want to speak a little bit to boron.
Okay.
And it's a good story, so don't worry, everybody. I wasn't happy with the idea of, they allow 100 ppm or 200 ppm in compost, because I've spent an evening in the lab doing borons while they're drilling a well to make sure it stayed below half a ppm, because boron's toxic to plants, especially citrus. Strawberries don't like.
Were you in
boron either.
water? Excuse me. Were you doing water or soil?
This was water, because
Okay.
they were drilling a well,
All right.
and they were worried as they got deeper and deeper, usually the TDS goes up,
Mm-hmm.
and with that comes the boron.
All right.
From
And-
the soil.
from the soil. So here we have a number of 12, and it's deficient at 0.5, and all crops like being between 0.1 and 0.5, and optimal range is between 0.2 and 0.5 and 0.2, and I can hand this around. Like I say, there's a good news to this story, so don't panic. Because I thought, oh my God, we shouldn't be putting this stuff on there. I'll put it there. A couple this way.
Thank you.
Well, it's a micronutrient, bizarrely enough.
It is, and you can have a deficiency.
Yeah.
We had a deficiency.
Yeah, and I can believe that. I can believe that. So, not being happy, I looked at the boron test and I'm going, if you look at boron on the soil control lab, you go way across and it says TMECC method 4.05-B. Well, who in the hell knows that? Well, I looked it up, and it actually refers you to EPA's solid waste 683, 684 methods, which is an aggressive heated acid digestion. Every little bit of boron in that soil is going into that number. then you look up a little bit, you look a little bit further and you see on this where it says satisfactory for all crops, 0.1 to 0.5 ppm HWE. That's a hot water extraction, not an boiling acid bath. So this number is, in general, it's got to be lower than the total, right? Or you hope it's lower than the total. That would be the good news, right? Because that's still too high. And it generally tends to be a fraction of it. So it's basically, it's the standard probably for compost to do that test, get a total. But for comparing it to toxicity levels for plants where strawberries don't like much of it at all.
It's a phytotoxin.
Yeah, it's a phytotoxin and a necessary nutrient, all in one. And so we probably, so, you know, where do you think this boron comes from?
Good question.
In our garden, are you asking, or in general?
In the compost.
Well, I think I know, but I want you to say it.
I think it comes from the ocean. There's 4.5 ppm boron in seawater. And you can see the aerosols wafting across Sea Ranch.
Yes, we
when-
can.
Well, look at our salt levels.
Oh yeah, and look at your windows and all this.
Yeah.
That's got boron in it. And these trees have had decades of boron hitting them. So it's probably that. The concern I have is that it could be pretty soluble. It's not coming from a clay or something like that. It's coming from salt. So the good news is, is that when you do the hot water extraction, it is a fraction of what you're seeing there. It'll be a fraction of 12. And usually, and especially when clays and other things are involved, it's like a tiny fraction of that, like a tenth. But we don't know that. So I would suggest that we do a hot water extraction test on the boron.
And do you know how to do that?
No. Well, I could look it up, but I don't have a lab. There's a protocol. I'm sure these guys probably do it. And if they still got some sample left, they probably can run it. But what could happen there is it could, because we're in a high rainfall area, we have high perking soils. That's good for lowering boron.
Mm-hmm.
Yet it's still sitting in the compost, which has been in a pile for a long time, so it didn't go away. So we just need to know, I think we're probably okay, but we even could have a deficiency, but we just don't
Well,
know.
first, I have a question. Since it appears in double the quantity that we
Yes.
have, or triple the quantity in the other two composts, are you suggesting that we're absorbing it in a different way, or it's a different?
No.
Because we have 12, but if you look at what's coming from
Cold Creek.
Ukiah, which is inland, they're producing 34 parts per million instead of 12.
And Grab and Grow is
It's
24.
Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. If you're gonna put forest compost on there, we need to know that the hot water extraction method is down in the safe range.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
And-
don't we
and
need
I
to
would
know that
suggest we
about
do-
anything?
What's that?
Don't we need to know that about all of the compost or anything we put in the soil?
If we go and choose another one, yeah, probably.
That's why earlier I said, we're looking at the FM and whether or not it's
Mm-hmm.
how we want to use it.
The urgency on the FM is we're using it.
Okay, but we had a
Right.
deficiency, even though we've been putting that 12
Yeah.
on for a number
Isn't that
of years.
interesting?
How do you know you have a deficiency?
Was
Well,
it?
no, it's not just in the Haney test, but you can see it in the plants because boron
Oh,
generally causes hollow stems in broccoli and discolored cauliflower. It tends to turn it pink.
Yeah, and
Tints it pink. We've
and the
seen
citrus
both
are
of those
sensitive, you
things.
see it in the
Yeah.
leaves.
Yeah, and that's a
you-
deficiency. You have to increase it to get
I,
rid of
I,
it.
I really don't know that you know that.
Well,
You know,
because that's what I'm
it
seeing
could
from
look
afar.
like
I have done some research
it could
about
look
it.
like a boron deficiency, but I would measure it.
yeah.
You
Well,
know,
I have no
and
disagreement
rule it
with
out.
measuring it, but I think that also, you have to understand that when you're putting a product on the soil, if we tested our soil to see what actually remains in the soil, because it's also either subject to being insoluble or insoluble, losing it to either other minerals or to water, I don't know, but our soil didn't have enough. And it's real common in Singing Frogs Farm explained they had the same problem, and it is in
They tipped
azomite.
us off to this, and
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
still curious, Bruce, I don't
So-
have an answer,
Yeah.
but I love that they were solving it by adding azomite. I just did a quick search of azomite.
Yeah.
It has over 67, and it does not list what's in there. I don't know, what's in there.
Right.
Why is it solving their problem? As soon as we started using azomite, all our stems were firm. They weren't flopping over. We had
But
solid stems.
azomite has a whole bunch of stuff.
Yeah, it's got.
Right.
It
You don't
does.
know what the magic.
It was a learning, and
Well,
we kind of.
it is.
Did we have a lot of forest compost in the potato beds before we grew the potatoes? I know we added
Yes, so
afterwards.
in June of last year, the planting team did a presentation on how to the strategy on how to cover blight was add a foot of forest mulch. It was to the berry method. We cited numerous studies, we cited the Cornell study, so that 12 inches of forest mulch was done on all those beds,
No,
including
I'm saying
36.
Before we grew the potatoes, had a lot of forest mulch been added to those beds?
I can look at the history for you.
Yeah.
The reason I ask
But
is
yes.
potatoes are very sensitive to boron. They would, and I don't recall seeing any evidence of boron toxicity in potatoes, because they are pretty susceptible.
Yeah, that would be good to have the history then, yeah. if you could
Well,
look that
yeah,
up sometime,
it's a
that'd be
history
good,
thing,
yeah.
we log all our information
Yeah,
and all our
we've got it,
tours in, so
thankfully,
it's
yes.
something we can go back to look at. But we haven't changed the way we've done, 24 was pretty consistent, as is in 2025, we've kind of managed it differently. So every year we make small changes, we're not making huge changes. But I would say, to answer your question, that it did have that as a bed prep.
Forest compost.
Because mounded beds have more need of that, because we lose so much height
Mhm.
on our beds, we end up like this. So we end up having the strategy of how do we build this up? How do we keep it, fed? So yes, I would say overall the bed preps are to do that.
So not that that's a lot of data, but potatoes are pretty sensitive to high
Mhm.
boron. So that's, if that has been our practice, I didn't see any evidence of it in.
Oh, and I don't know that, I'm not saying we've got that. I'm just saying we have an opportunity here to know if we're adding a lot of it. This
Mhm.
test suggests we're adding a lot of it.
Mhm.
And I don't think that's, I don't think it's available to the plants. And what you're saying is we've had a deficiency in the past.
We've had a deficiency, so making it
And so if
available
the
is
hot water
important.
extraction shows it gets very, very little of this,
Yeah.
it would support exactly what you're
Yeah.
saying.
So I mean, I'm all for testing. It's just that I want to be sure that we're all kind of understanding that when you see a problem with the plant and you try to research what it is, and you go to Cornell and you go to here, they give you a list of symptoms you might want to look for, so you could easily identify what the problem is. And there are a few that are pretty specific, and the hollow broccoli stems is a pretty well-known one, and the tinted cauliflower is another.
Mhm.
And both of them are unmistakable because they're either pink or they're not. There's a hole and there's not. I mean, it's like, it's
Yeah.
not a degree of understanding. So that seems
Something
pretty
blended
clear.
into something else.
But it's not something you want to have too much of. But the fact that it's in these two other composts in much higher quantities sort of suggests that
Curious.
no matter what we do,
Well, again, they're using the same method, which is a total,
right?
which is,
Yeah.
is not all 100% environmentally available to the plant.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So there's gonna be a bunch of it, and from the stuff I read on the internet, it could be just 10% of it's available. It could be that low. But then when I think of where it might come from, we might have a different thing. We're not seeing any evidence of toxicity.
Yeah. No, we're seeing the opposite. That's what my
And we're seeing
concern
evidence
is.
of the opposite.
Yeah.
It's just, the more we understand our garden and the materials that we're actively using, I
It's
think.
good. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm sorry that the Haney test didn't have a boron test, so I don't know why that is, but it was not in there. You know, they do test for a lot.
Right, and they might have done the hot water extraction rather than total, because the total is actually kind of misleading and you know,
Yeah.
because
Yeah,
as soon as you go to what's toxic,
right. And
So just kind of see where we are. It's 3:25, and we've moved just beyond our group discussion of the FM, or do we need to talk about that a little more in terms of how we use it? Are we all agreed that it has a purpose as a mulch?
What leads,
it's like if you
That's
think
a big
if you think we're
question.
using too much, then no.
And it's because of our, I mean, and just to confirm, sorry if I'm asking the same question again, you're saying aside from new beds that we've created, we've never mixed in forest mulch intentionally in our beds. So everything that I found at depth is just the incidental mixing that has occurred through our practices.
It's naturally migrating.
Well, there's one, and we tested it, which has
leak.
Veritromet. The leak bed is always trenched so that we get tall leaks. So
So-
it has been thoroughly mixed in. So when you look at the Haney test results for bed 92, you will see where it has been combined. And it's not refined forest mulch, it's straight
Sure.
thick stuff. So,
Full chunk.
so that'll give you a perspective on that if you want to look at the results from bed 92 on the Haney test.
We want to avoid,
Because, I mean, you know, and I'm seeing the skepticism here, and I'm gonna send a little chart, and I can explain it if you'd like, because the level of organic matter we have is like at the upper limits of what I would consider helpful agronomic, unless you're going to, you know, hydroponic type of growing, where, you know, you have a base and you're recirculating water. If you're not recirculating the water, you're gonna be overusing water. You're gonna have to irrigate more frequently and ultimately more. And I have a concern about the quantity of water we're using. And that will overshadow the benefits of its use as a mulching material if that continues to get incorporated into the soil. So that's my concern. And it's not,
Okay.
and we're not talking trivial, we're talking about the need to use 20 to 30%, maybe even more water on some crops. So I do the math and I see instead of
I suggest you look at the
10,000,
leak
it's
beds.
13,000.
Because I suggest you look at the leak beds record for watering, because it's my crop, so I
Mhm.
dictate the watering. And I worked out how you achieve 1 inch per hour, or 1 inch per week of equivalent to rainfall. So that's on our water sheet on one of the second or third tabs, it says information.
Mhm.
And so when you look at the water system that the leaks are on, you'll see it's a 2-row 6-inch system. And that normally it's used 20 minutes 3 times a week. That's gonna give you that. So that's what it's been getting.
Okay.
And that
And
has
there are
a-
a
And
few
this-
times when it
And
gets.
this might be, so when I've looked at, you know, I don't recall looking specifically at leak, a lot of this, what I'm mentioning, has to do with what is then the rooting depth, and just the fact you say, and I've
I'm
harvested.
sorry,
from-
can't hear you.
The
It's the
rooting.
rooting depth.
Yes.
You know, so leak, it's pretty, you know, we're putting it in trenches and it's pretty deep
Right.
rooted. So there, the issue that I'm talking about starts going away for a variety of reasons, because it's getting much more into the mineral soils. So what I'm discussing is an issue of.
I have some rooting information if you'd like to
Sure,
look
so,
at it.
so what I'm discussing is, you know, for things like lettuce and other more
Arugula.
shallow, what's that?
Arugula.
Arugula, shallow rooted crops, so.
This is lettuce.
Strawberry.
Sure.
It's a foot. You can
Strawberries.
have a look. This is a well-respected rooting.
What-
How deep the roots
How deep
go.
the roots go. This is a comparison of in compact soil and in loose soil.
Okay,
And this was a study that was done in Nebraska. That's probably the most high-respected study of roots there is.
sure.
So when we talk about shallow roots, I think unfortunately we're having a problem with achieving roots that we should be achieving
Right.
based on either our process of planting or our process of watering, that we should be
Mhm.
watering with the goal of watering more deeply.
Yes, so thank you, you're getting it.
Absolutely.
As long as you do that, you're getting away from, let's call it the mixing zone of mulch and soil. If you're getting down to 6
The
to 8
roots
inches.
shouldn't, This is a foot deep, that's
Yeah,
where
but-
they should be.
But they frequently have been shallower. And that you can observe by the quantity of water for some of the lettuce beds and some of the strawberry, we used a lot of water.
Yeah,
And-
we don't disagree with you. Part of
Okay,
the
so-
SC presentation the
Yeah, we
planning
need
team
to,
made
we
last.
really need to work on watering methods
Yeah.
because we were not using this much water until we started instituting a lot of the hand watering, which is very indiscriminate in how much water comes out of that hose. And we have to look at that stuff. But there is also another situation with the water holding capacity of soil, which has to do with the biology of the soil. Are you familiar with the soil aggregates?
Yes.
Okay, and how they're formed by the microbial action?
Yeah, yes.
Okay, and
Mhm.
that's what we're talking about when we're talking about water holding capacity. Are we on the same page?
Yes.
Okay,
But we haven't quantified that.
right, you can't with the soil texture because they're crushed. You have to
Just to
do,
let you know, I've come with a background in agronomy, and I've had soil physics, advanced soil physics, and I've done a lot of advice and analysis, and I've testified with regard to irrigation of crops. So I do know a thing or two about water use.
I'm glad that that's the case because it's really important to understand that regenerative agriculture and planting of cover crops tend to really increase the water holding capacity of soil
And
through the
again, you're bringing
introduction
up
of
things
more
that I
biology.
don't dispute. The regenerative is good. We're talking about forest compost. So don't change the subject. And it's forest compost. The use of the mulch is good. Getting integrated into the upper 6 to 8 inches, especially if that's then the rooting zone, bad. I mean, but I've not heard that you. I guess I'm hearing that you think that might also be bad, but that's the specific issue. And for the crops that are relatively shallow rooted, is using the forest compost the way we're using it a good thing? So it's not about regenerative, it's not about do we want a happy, local, healthy garden, it's about the specifics of forest compost that has some fairly chunky woody material and it has some very specific soil properties. Is that good for all of our crops and the way we're applying it? And is it particularly good if we're already at 20 to 30% of organic material? How much is enough?
What I've learned and the benefit of all of this was really how much that we aren't really growing plants. We're actually creating that aggregate layer and feeding that microbiome with carbon. And that is the glue and the sponge that holds the water. This is not a deviation here. This is what we're really cultivating. That's where regenerative farming takes a big pivot. And thinking of it as that sponge that you're feeding, we need to feed it all year. And if we stop, where is that new resource coming? Where's all that new carbon coming from? That's the question I pose.
When you look,
And doing cover crops, and it's great, it's gratifying to see in the garden how much cover crop
I
we have.
know,
'cause
it's
that
so
is-
good to see them
that is,
back.
you know,
And no
dispute there,
one's
that's-
disputing that.
No one's
That's
disputing
great.
cover
That's
crops.
great. Just to circle back, we're
I am
talking,
so happy after so many years of not doing cover crops
We're-
that it's back.
no, and
So,
also, and going further back, I was, my first year that I joined the garden, I was ready to quit because the chore that we did was we were weeding and we were tossing out the weeds into a pile that was being disposed of that had all the topsoil, and I was like,
I had the same experience and I was
this
gonna
is-
leave.
this is insane, why are we doing
Yes.
this? So thanks to everybody that we're not doing, so we're not arguing about that, we're arguing very specifically about the nature of the wood chips and for some specific beds, and could we be doing better? And my concern is, it's, because of course, this won't stop us from growing things, but if we're using 20 to 30% more water, and it's gonna cost us $2,000 or $3,000, I'm gonna keep being really hot about it because.
I'm hot about it.
Okay,
I'm
so-
mad about it too. I'm
Yeah, so-
really
so then-
upset of all the water
so-
use we're
So
doing.
then, if nothing else, could we just change or expand our goal? It's not just to have a regenerative garden, that we grow happy crops and healthy crops and nutritious crops, but we do so with the least amount of water necessary.
And
Choose
and I
regenerative.
think I think it's also important to look at mounded beds versus raised beds. Look how much raised beds use versus mounded beds. There's a reason we're doing more dry farm this year because of that very fact. We can have more water saved in those lower layers than our older raised beds have, and that the watering sheets show us that. We're going to convert more raised beds to mounded beds to save water. Because
Hopefully not the newly constructed ones, just the old.
Please.
all the ones, instead of rebuilds,
Yeah, good.
we're gonna convert.
Let's do that.
We are so on that page. It is all about that. There's no denying that if we don't make that a single focus of how we manage the garden. As a matter of fact, I think we have a problem in the garden. It's part of the PT we're talking about, is that we have the watering sheet dispersed between too many people. We've got hoop house, plant parents, a lot of other crop teams who want more water. So instead of it being centralized, it gets a little out of whack. I mean, I think it needs to be centralized to control it to a point. There's a couple of good examples we saw this year in our team meeting where some plant parent adjusted a bed and it never got readjusted back. We're seeing all of that. I think there's no denying that is our chief focus on water usage this year, is really what can we do? And that was part of the presentation I made.
Exactly.
So you asked the question, and sorry, then I turned to big things, like, are we all in agreement about using forest compost?
That's really
And-
what I was hoping we could have, at the end of this session, I don't know if we're gonna get to compost, at the end of this session, are we gonna continue to use the mulch?
So everything that I'm hearing here, I'm still of the opinion that we can use it, but we need to use it more carefully and in a targeted way to achieve very specific goals and to not have other things occur. And what all of that is still open to debate, but I'm hearing some agreement with regard to that. But what our practice, in my opinion, of the way we've been putting it on as a mulch or as an amendment to beds has not been optimal, and we should not continue to do it.
Okay, Roy?
I would say, yeah, I'm in agreement with Les about cutting down on the use of the forest mulch. I think it can still be used as a mulch, but we don't want it migrating down into that top 6 or 8 inches of our beds. And putting an inch on might risk that. Putting a half inch or a quarter inch might not. And we're kind of in the learning curve on this too. We just started this at the end of the garden year of starting to do these beds like this. So we might want to experiment with it and do a lot of observation and see what we come up with.
I think our chores would prove differently, Roy. We've been doing this for a long time.
The mulch layers, this is all
Yeah.
the new bed preps.
I took over from Jeannie,
I've been doing this since 2019.
But
2018.
there's something
Yeah.
different about what we're doing
When
at
did
the
you,
end of the crop
when did you
season.
first look at the forest mulch material?
I've got it in my
Because that would
my
tell us
email,
when we
I-
started using it.
We started using it by using wood chips because we didn't know
We were just
that we
using
could
wood,
use
that's right.
forest
We were-
compost.
we were
So we
using the-
used
the-
wood chips
it was
in
all
their
wood
place.
chips.
Do we all agree that using wood chips pulls nitrogen away from our soil because it needs it to break down?
It doesn't have enough surface area touching the soil for
Right.
that to be an issue. It's
Yeah.
the top quarter inch of the soil that's affected by that when it's used as mulch. Once we stopped tilling the soil, that was never a problem. And we stopped tilling the soil when I started working there.
Mm-hmm.
It just seemed to me that we were adding this stuff like it was
Gold.
gold. Yeah, or no, now it was gold. It was free, before we had to pay for it, so we were a little more, skimped on it. But I think we added a lot over the last 2 years on the beds.
And how do you feel about the continued use?
I have measured that material for holding capacity I've measured. There's nothing that beats the soil. The soil holds the most water. It has a silt component that holds the water. I would.
We don't want it to hold water. It's not why we employ it. Well, I'm serious. Okay, straw.
Yeah.
So tell me about using straw. Say we pivot to straw. What would you say about that?
I don't have an opinion on straw.
So it doesn't hold moisture?
It won't migrate down like the chips will, for sure. It'll tend to stay on the surface and decompose right at the surface. I've used lots of straw in my life.
And if it
We used it
migrates, it
before.
will
It
decompose
decomposes so
much
fast.
more rapidly.
Yeah, wood is just a slow decomposer. That was what the food web test showed us. It's a slow anaerobic decomposition. Now it's changing, and that's a good thing, and maybe we can work with it. But for what we have now, it's an anaerobic, woody material. It's got, you know.
Well, what do you think about that OM to ash ratio? To me, the industry standard clearly rates the FM as way above average of anything you can buy out there. Head and shoulders. Just
For what?
the OM, organic material to ash ratio. So it's 100%. You have organic material decomposing into ash by oxidation, the oxidation rates. If you look at the other compost, just to show you maturity level or how it's oxidized, let me correctly say. The organic material in forest mulch is 43.2. The ash is 56.8. Let's look at the other two just to help give us context, what everybody is selling out there, what we can purchase, the power of our dollar. What can our dollar get? What purchasing? If we look at Coldwater Creek, their OM is 66.85. And their ash is 33.2.
I'm looking at this, trying to
Yeah,
figure
I'm
out
looking
where
at
it
Gold
is.
Creek now.
It's on our chart that we sent
It's
you.
on
That's
our
what
chart, it's on their tests.
Well, I got the test too.
Yeah,
organic
I'm looking at
materials
this.
on the left, and then ash is 2 after.
I see, so organic matter, 57.3 dry weight, I see, and 37.5 as
You
received.
should do dry weight, by the way.
Well,
Yes.
that's what it says, 57.3 under this,
On what are you looking at?
Cold Creek Compost Soil Control Labs.
Not the
page-
one you gave
page.
us.
Well, that's all I ever had.
Do you have it, what's the date on
What's the
it?
date?
The date on this is 11th of July, 2025.
Okay, ours is the 22nd of April,
You must have given us
2025.
2. Sorry. We're just looking at the one you
Well,
sent us.
and it may have been pulled, I was receiving stuff from the guys. I would talk to them and she would email me stuff, so there may have been, but that's, what was your
Well,
date?
let's look
The
at
date on
green,
yours again?
yeah.
Yeah, let me.
Let's look at Clean Green. They have 69.5 to their ash is 30.5, which is pretty low.
66.8.
It measures decomposition. Industry standard is around 50.
Yeah, 50/50 is the goal, so
So that is telling us something. What is it telling us? It's telling us that it's oxidizing, whether it's anaerobic or not. Somewhere along the line, it oxidized. Maybe time is the
They actually
oxidizer.
burn it. That's how they get the ash.
It's
Yeah,
combustion.
it's
But
It's
oxidation
combustion,
is
but I don't understand
combustion.
how that,
We did
other
a
ones
lot
could
of
have
reading on
more
that.
actually soil in the material and not produce an ash.
Well, it's through oxidation. That's what decomposition is. If the industry standard to OM to ash is a certain rating, it helps ascertain how decomposed it is. And what those numbers are showing us is how decomposed it is. I just want to put that out for conversation here, that you're saying it's not decomposed, when in fact it's more decomposed than anything else on the market.
That's not accurate, that's not.
Not
that's
mature, I'm not saying
scientific,
that, I'm
but
saying
no,
ash.
it's-
Okay, Roy,
you
we're, I'm going
I
to
think we need
suspend
to
the time
understand
thing
that better.
because we're obviously, this is probably the discussion we need to have in terms of where do we go with the
Where do we
FM?
go?
Roy, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Well, you got, surface area is a part of the problem. You've got a lot of organic matter in large pieces. It's all inside those pieces. When you look at the texture, you bought compost yourself, you guys know, it's got much finer, massive amounts of surface area. And that's the difference, is how readily available that organic matter is to the breakdown process, right? And so that's why wood doesn't break down quickly. I mean, we already know this, right?
I know,
And so,
yeah.
so you can
Like
call it organic matter. You could have a board. You have just a big piece of board. That's 100% organic matter, except for the air parts that's
Yeah.
in there. And but it's not going to break down, you know. So I'm not sure why we're beating
We
this dead
want
horse.
particle size difference. I mean, we want longevity. We don't want something that's uniform.
If water is draining through it and not being stored by our soil, if it's migrating down into the soil and then the water is running through it, we have water loss. So it's functional on the surface as a mulch, but is it functional as a compost in the upper layers of our soil, where compost is full of fungal and bacterial organisms and is continuing to break down rapidly because of the high surface area and soft particles. I don't think you're comparing these things at all. There's not a comparison, in my opinion.
Well, this doesn't make sense to me, so I'd have to research it. I don't,
Well,
to me, it doesn't make sense. So you say, okay, we have this number that says it's organic matter. Then we go and torch it and we get a certain amount of ash. If it's lignin, who cares? I mean, lignit's gonna break down real slow. So
yes,
I don't
correct.
understand this test.
See, so what it's showing
how you're
me,
using it.
what it's showing me, and I'm actually talking with Rick Craig about this. What it suggests, and I want him to back
Which
this up.
footnotes?
Yeah, so we have we can send you some links from UC Davis.
You
and-
have all of them,
Yeah,
actually.
they're
Just
in
It's
your
on the
chart.
spreadsheet.
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
of the spreadsheet.
I want you guys to
Okay.
read this because we
Yeah.
spent several days reading about this and researching it to guide us to the making a good decision. And part of this leads us to believe that we must, to have that happen, have a greater percent of branches than we think. I've been writing with and working with Rick Craig on this. I want him to determine his ratio. I'm not telling him anything, I just want a ratio. Because they're selling the logs, they're not using the tree trunks in there, and they're using a greater, I just want a ratio to what over all his years he's used, what does he think the ratio is going into that? Because this is what this is pointing to. If you read the research, it's pointing to a higher branch, leaf, and needle than tree lignum.
So when you go to a commercial compost facility, and I've been to dozens of them in Oregon, and we're talking 100-acre facilities, and the stuff that comes in needs to be about 30-to-1 carbon to nitrogen, and they can't take a certain number of logs in
I
that they
agree.
can chip. They just don't do it, and the breakdown process with that material is a chipping process, and then it goes through a turning process where air is introduced into the piles, and it heats, and as it heats, you get the thermophilic bacteria doing their wonderful thing, and then it goes into a mesophilic stage. And if we had done all that, we would have more compost-like material. They just were putting it in the pile. They were chipping it in Amani's big giant chipper and putting it in the pile, and it was scattered and never dealt with. It was never aerated. And so the wood part of that pile is dominating the green part of that pile. The question of how much is there is less relevant. What we have hasn't seen the thermophilic processes, no matter what we call it, right? It is what it is now, and that's what we're seeing. It's hard to work with. It's nasty to work with physically, I don't wanna ever have to strain it.
Well,
If we're gonna use
that was
it, if
a
we're gonna use it,
question.
I wanna, we're gonna put a screener, we're not gonna.
That was a question I was going to put in terms of, on the agenda, I thought, well, benefits of FM, challenges of FM. On my challenge list is sifting. Our gardeners do not like sifting. It's a chore
Ready
that,
to quit.
yeah,
It's a nasty thing to do. Well, we can screen it, and I think we can build a screen in an economical way too, so. It's an aside, I don't wanna divert
Okay,
from where
so
we're going with this.
Read the research if you're curious at all.
Yep.
We just submitted it for your questions and your curiosity, you know, but we found a very interesting link between them.
So there's two main sources, UC Davis and Oregon State University, as well as the soil lab themselves. That's who we use for our soils.
okay, so where are we?
It's on the chart,
On the
on the
chart.
comparison chart we sent for forest mulch.
So where are we in the discussion with the FM? Where are we?
I think we got as far as Michael.
Oh,
No, I mean, generally, are we going to continue to use it as a mulch?
yes.
Yes,
Are we
definitely.
gonna continue to use it in the quantities we've been using as a? That's the second question.
Okay, so the second question is, are we going to use it in the quantities that we're using presently, which is a half an inch in the raised beds and an inch in the mounded beds? And we know that that's going to, we do know that that is going to work its way down, right, into,
It's gonna
The
get
soil.
digested in less than a
okay.
year.
So, you're saying, what's your answer to that question?
You know, we can use it, I think it's not gonna be as beneficial as if we had an organic compost, but we can use it. Our garden will continue to improve, it will generate fungal organisms, I think we could just use it. I mean, it's convenient, it's free,
Well,
So-
that's the part that,
but I don't think we should
Bruce.
keep putting that much on. So that's my opinion, I think we're putting too much.
all right.
Even the half-inch mulch.
Yeah, half inch is max, I would say, you know.
As an
Half inch
experiment-
max.
As an experiment, as, I don't know if it's a compromise, but to do some more monitoring, can we select a couple of beds in which we don't do it?
We have that. Matter of fact, I think the Haney test looks at that and measures soil respiration. And if you pair it with the history.
That isn't what Les
talking
is
about
saying.
moving forward,
What
not
Les
adding-
is saying is,
not
as an
adding-
experiment,
Thank you.
can we use no forest mulch on the top? Isn't that what you're saying?
Thank you.
As an experiment, can we have some beds that don't use any forest mulch?
So we're gonna live without mulch, and we're also gonna live without compost. I'm just saying
I
this,
don't think
because
it's-
these are
it's
natural
without-
things to say. If we don't buy commercial compost and use it as a mulch, we'll have no mulch on those beds, and we'll also have no compost on those beds. So the forest mulch does act somewhat like a compost. So I'm just trying to draw the conclusions. I
Especially
don't
with our
mind
cover
testing
crops.
less. I think it's a good test to try, but it's a whole different, it gives us a different answer than we might get if we started using some organic compost.
Wouldn't there be more evaporation too?
Oh, you'll have more
Well,
evaporation.
Yeah, I mean,
at
for the
surface,
test to work,
yeah.
you'd have to do it for maybe a couple of years and plant some similar crops, or maybe do half a bed. But again, that's the question, the open question I have. It's like, I know it acts as a surface mulch that will impede evaporation, but I also know that as it gets incorporated into the soil, it is acting to require more water and more frequent irrigations, particularly if we're not doing the proper irrigation to incent, to promote deep rooting. So I
we
mean,
gotta
there's
do that,
alternate ways to
for
do
sure.
it. It's like, well, water a bit better, not just doing, the standard rates that we've been doing, but try to increase it so that
Can we,
we stretch out the frequency and increase the
Right,
quantity.
we're going to do that this next year. We're going to increase the amount of water we put in and reduce the frequency.
what
So
about
that's-
Justine's test she did on row 6 with the broccoli, where she raked away all the mulch?
It was so cold.
And she looked at water use, she looked at everything, plant, everything. She has a very very detailed experimentation based on that.
I'm not sure we have time to do that. Bruce,
Well, I can submit.
this is
I
the
can
final
submit
word,
for
because
your,
we have to,
review.
it's 5 minutes to 4. And I know that, hello, Amy, you're in the wrong discussion, you should be. But they need their quiet time, and we've been doing this for 2 hours, okay? So, Bruce, what do you think about that FM? We didn't even get to Crackles.
Yeah, I'm gonna go off topic just a little bit. I think this is my last meeting. I've had enough of this.
I've had enough of this.
Yeah.
I agree.
I mean, they're gonna do what they want, and I feel that my suggestions have been dismissed all along, and it's sitting in the front of my brain too much. I've got more important things that need to be there. And
I'm
so-
sorry to hear that.
And I like everybody here, and I think it affects our relationships with each other, and I don't like that. I think it's just too costly for me. So, off topic, but that's, so my opinion.
But if you're
is not
feeling that way,
relevant.
it may mean that we're not open, our mind is not open to hear. And I don't know what to say about that.
I don't either.
I mean, that's my whole thing that's been at the beginning of this is trust. And it's, I'm not sure, because the structure that let me start over. The structure that we have in the garden is interesting, because the planting team is making the decisions on what's happening in the beds. Would we all agree on that?
And we presented every month.
That's the way it's been, or that's the way
That's the way it
should be?
That's the way it is presently, because that's the nature of the way our garden is structured. Because we're working with 150 people or whatever. So
Well, and
I don't know what I'm trying to say, but I'm trying to validate what Bruce is saying in the fact that we've had many, many meetings, and it sounds like there's more justification going on.
And we discussed regenerative gardening, which we've all agreed to from day
Right.
one.
And I'd like to support what Bruce is saying, because I haven't been involved in previous meetings, but I'm sensing an enormous level of dismissiveness and really not a lot of interest in discussing the specific issues. Like I say, we go back to topics about regenerative gardening as if we're not debating so many of the things that are brought up. We're debating some very specific things about forest health, but we always circle back it's to another topic, which is not what we're debating. So I find it very frustrating as well. And I'd like to say the decisions have been made by the planting team. Once they start impinging on things like water and the cost involved, I think other garden members should start being more interested and take a more active role, because we're talking about maybe $2,000 or $3,000 worth of water because of decisions that are being made that I don't think are fully informed by the science.
Planting team,
That's what her neighbor played.
do you have a comment
Really?
about
So unfortunately,
people feeling frustrated
their
with
stereo is
what
opposite where our.
in this process that we're trying to do?
Well, just as a small note here, I think the regenerative is an important aspect, because I think we're really walking away from even things like no-till, perhaps. If we're talking about, hey, we can't have too much of this stuff migrating down. So I do think that we are walking back from regenerative. And going outside, bring in commercial compost is another way of doing that.
bringing in one material or another material? One is free, one is expensive.
One's
Okay.
local, one is outside.
Okay, so
But it-
that's subjective.
you're
This is
saying the
not,
same
this is not, that has nothing to do with the analysis that we've just been discussing. So,
No, I'm saying it's an
It is-
important idea. He was
Okay.
echoing that.
1 minute.
We have 1
See,
minute.
because I love this guy, and I'm just feeling like I don't want this coming between you and me and your lovely wife and you guys. And
Where did you hear the dispute of doing regenerative gardening?
I
Where do you-
think.
Because essentially you're going against it.
Methods.
No, I
Yeah,
don't
the
think
methods.
anyone is saying that.
I'm not saying,
I don't
what,
think anyone's
where-
saying
It's the
I
methods,
disagree.
we're actually agreeing with the science. We don't disagree with the science. We don't. We're talking about methods of implementation. That's it.
Bring
What have I
in
said
material from
against
a
regenerative
pile or
gardening?
from somewhere else is the same as bringing.
Said it's not
It's
not
this is
something
touchy-
we're
that's touchy-feely.
considering
It has
anymore,
nothing to do with-
because it's already been done in the past.
It's not real touchy-feely when you look at what pesticides have been applied to Sonoma and
We didn't
Mendocino
get
County,
to-
and what we
we didn't
get
to
it.
that- We didn't get to that part of the
Okay,
discussion.
I brought it in. That's fine.